Look at the dome down in D.C.
Technically summer until the 21st. The seasons always change over on the 21st.
Who said it was Labor Day?
Exactly. Right. Plus, it's still a little warm outside.
Yeah, and it's still summer. You know what? This would be one of those Fridays when it would be great to just sleep in if you could, Pete, you know?
I wish.
Yeah,
what's that like?
That'd be great. Anyway.
Oh, guys. So my alarm, I didn't have my phone on this morning. I had it on, but the volume was off. And my alarm kept going off, but I kept hitting snooze.
I've used that one before.
I swear, because my daughter slept with me last night. She came in the middle of the night and got in bed with me, and I woke up at midnight because I fell asleep reading her books last night, so we went to bed
There's
together.
a lot going on.
Really early. So I wake up at midnight, and I couldn't go back to sleep, so I'm watching shows and reading the news on my phone, and it's making noises. So she wakes up and says, "Mama, go back to sleep." And so I said, "Okay, baby." So then I turned my volume off, and I put my earbuds in so then I went back to sleep, and my volume was off. So I woke up to Gavin, Tammy, all of our amazing folks that are behind the scenes, and they're trying to wake me up.
Yeah.
I walked onto the fifth floor, and it was Ainsley panic.
Was it really? I'm sorry, y'all.
But you know,
y'all do so much work to put the show together, and then you had that on top of the stresses that you're already dealing with. So
but you know,
sorry.
it's the last Friday in the summer. This would be a good Friday to sleep in on, and you did kinda.
I got 2 or 3 extra hours, so I feel really good. It's going to be a great show.
That's great. All right. Meanwhile, let's start with this. It was 8 days ago that the Biden administration announced that they would no longer fly deportation flights of Haitians back to Haiti. And essentially what that meant is all the people who are waiting on our southern border to come into the country from Haiti, they said, hey, they're not going to send us back. And so they started texting everybody back in Haiti, and the border's wide open. And that explains why, over the last couple of days, you know that bridge down in Del Rio, Texas, that had 4,000 people? Last night, they estimated it was at close to 11,000 because so many Haitians, most of those people are Haitians, because the message from our administration is, if you're from Haiti, we're not going to send you back. So you know what? They're coming to America.
Well, and now we're learning that Fox can no longer fly our drones over the bridge. We got all these images with a drone, and they're saying for safety reasons, you can't fly your drones anymore, media. The FAA is saying that. They said the Border Patrol...
They're not saying media, they're just saying Fox, because we're the only ones.
Well, True, exactly. The Border Patrol requested the temporary flight restriction due to drones interfering with law enforcement flights on the border. As with any temporary flight restriction, media is able to call the FAA to make requests to operate in the area. Apparently, we did call the FAA to find out. We need clarification. We have not heard back from them.
Yes, our one pesky drone is the big problem with border security down there. And you're exactly right, Steve. This has nothing to do with media, everything to do with Fox. There are no other drones flying there. There's no one else talking about it. If this had happened a year ago, this would have been dubbed the Trump refugee camp under a bridge, and the nightly news from other networks would have been broadcasting from there.
And AOC would go down there crying.
She'd be down there crying. This would be mistreatment of black and brown people because Trump is racist. Instead, Steve, you laid it out so well. Because of policy changes that have sent signals, you have thousands of people stranded under a bridge trying to make a case of being refugees, but all of which at this point are illegals. And the administration's answer? Block the media. Not do anything about it, block the media.
Basically cover it up. We don't want you to report on what's happening down there. We know the other channels aren't going to report on it. We know Fox will, so let's block them from doing that.
Well, you know what? I got news for the administration. You can't do that. There's this thing called the First Amendment where they're trying to impose what they can through the administration, and they're using the FAA because they're in charge of the sky. And they're saying, okay, let's block Fox from taking pictures from the sky. These are pictures not from a drone. These are just embarrassing photos for the administration as people stream across the Rio Grande Valley.
Can we fly the drones lower? Because the FAA, when do they start taking control of the sky? At how many feet?
Listen, Bill Malugin and his team are going to try to figure out, I bet, a way to do this. You know, if you're on that bridge driving, you could get a really good shot. There are different things they could do. Or, you know, I'm sure the state of Texas has got choppers in the area. Maybe we could put a live view in their chopper. There are ways around this, but nonetheless, it is so embarrassing for the administration to have these images, because when you look at the public opinion polls, what's the one item they do the worst on? border control. And when you look at what's going on right there, I mean, that is such a heartbreaking image of people who are running for their lives out of Honduras, out of Haiti, out of wherever.
Yeah.
But we're letting them do this because there's no enforcement on our southern border. Come on in, Haiti. You're next in line.
Tom Cotton's going to ask the FAA questions. He tweeted out, "What a coincidence. The FAA better be ready to explain to Congress why they're suddenly blocking the media from covering Biden's border crisis."
It's true. Well, Senator Ted Cruz was down there on the scene at the Del Rio Bridge and described what he saw. Watch.
The drone footage started this morning, and people across the country were horrified. And I guess the political operatives at the Biden White House saw that and decided the last thing they want is Fox News actually reporting on what's happening down here. So now the FAA is saying, please, no journalists allowed. That bridge is behind me. And I just finished going again with my cell phone, taking videos of what's happening there. It is the most horrific thing I've ever seen. It is packed in as a mass of humanity. They take your breath away because it just goes on and on and on. Infants, little children, people struggling enormously.
Senator Cruz is exactly right. The administration is trying to stop us from telling the story because it's embarrassing to the administration. We're not going to stop telling the story. We might not have the drone pictures, but we're going to have pictures.
It's just like the Donna facility. Remember when no one could get access to it? It had to be members of Congress in there with their own personal cell phones, people in front of them trying to block it, as if we're not allowed to get that kind of information.
Remember Governor Abbott wanted to go into the convention center in Dallas because he wanted to find out if any of the girls, if it was true that they were being assaulted. And they said, no, you're not allowed to come in. He's the governor.
Well, and keep in mind, the Donna facility is where the whole kids in cages thing started.
Yep.
And those were images, and these are from this year, but those initial images were from the Obama administration. But they were trying to tag Trump, you know, he's the world's worst person because look what he's doing to these kids. Well, that was being done right there, and we're blurring out the faces because they're all children in a COVID super spreader event. Those are children from various countries during the Biden administration, and the Biden administration is super embarrassed of those.
And they can't get the last Americans that are stranded over in Afghanistan home, yet anyone can just walk in our country on our southern border, and we have the images to prove it, and they don't want you to see it.
Yes, and we now have the recent allocation of where the initial tranche of Afghan refugees are going to go, many of them going to Texas and Florida and North Carolina and Arizona and Michigan. What makes this story even more potent for everyone out there is we don't know where any of these Haitians or illegals are going. There is no actual process by which they're being processed and tracked to show up for court to see if their claim of being a refugee is legitimate, and so they will be in a neighborhood near you.
And here's the problem with the Afghan refugees. You know, they've temporarily stopped the evacuation flights because the people are bringing measles to the United States, where measles, for the most part, have been eradicated.
All right, 6:09 here on the East Coast.
Almost feels like we don't have a border.
You picked a good day to sleep in.
All right, it's 6:09. Thank you so much for waking up with us. Let's get back to the Gabby Petito story. Her parents are pleading with her boyfriend's family to provide information about their missing daughter, believing he knows exactly where she is. A live report on the latest twists in the case, and his sister is speaking out now.
Plus, as was just detailed, the Taliban still keeping stranded Americans from flying out of Afghanistan as the Biden administration admits the Taliban is not cooperating. What a shocker! The questions the White House is ducking about the president's exit plan coming up next on Fox and Friends, live from New York City. And look at the great 6:14 here in New York City on this Friday, and a Fox News alert. The family of missing 22-year-old Gabby Petito telling Fox News they believe her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie, knows exactly where she is.
Laundrie's sister speaking out about Gabby's disappearance, saying she hopes it's a, quote, big misunderstanding.
Carly Shimkus joins us live from outside of their family home, the Laundrie family home, with more. Carly, have you seen any of them?
Haven't seen any movement whatsoever this morning, today, Ainsley. And, you know, while Brian has remained tight-lipped, haven't seen him, haven't heard from him except through a statement via his lawyer. Brian's sister is speaking out this morning. She is calling Gabby someone who was like a member of their family. Take a listen.
Obviously, me and my family want Gabby to be found safe. She's like a sister, and my children love her. And all I want is for her to come home safe and sound, and this to be just a big misunderstanding.
Yeah, but still, comments like that aren't good enough for Gabby's parents, who tell Fox News Brian knows where their daughter is and is choosing to remain silent.
The outreach is, I think, 350 million plus people asking where's Gabby, and the only person who knows it is sitting over in their house over there, and you can't have a more frustrating situation.
It's scary and heartbreaking. We are running out of time. We just want him to talk. Just tell us, where was she? Where did you leave her?
And Gabby was last known to be in Grand Teton, Wyoming on August 25th. She went missing while touring national parks with her boyfriend, but their road trip wasn't as perfect as it appeared on social media. Moab, Utah police releasing body camera footage that shows the couple after they'd gotten into a physical fight.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, some days I have really bad OCD.
But she just gets worked up sometimes, and I try and really distance myself from her.
And on top of that, Utah police now say they are actively looking into any connection between Gabby's disappearance and a double homicide of a newlywed couple at a campground outside Moab. Crystal Turner and Kylan Schultz were found shot to death less than a week after Brian and Gabby's big fight, meaning all four people were in Moab around the same time. Still, police here in Northport stress that this is still a missing persons case and that no criminality is expected as of now.
Hey, Carly, what I know that local police down there are running the investigation so far, and as you point out, it's still a missing persons thing. There's no sense of criminality at this point. But is the FBI looking at his phone and trying to triangulate, exactly where was he over the last month? And the same thing for her phone?
Yeah, there have been a lot of questions about evidence and how police are handling that. And yesterday during the police press conference, there was a member of the FBI present at the press conference as well, although he didn't speak. They talked about several different things. First, I want to get to the van that that police has in their custody. They say that they are analyzing some things inside the van. They didn't want to call it evidence right now, but there are some interesting things that they want to take a look at and see if it could possibly turn into evidence. The other thing is social media companies, and police yesterday said that the social media companies themselves have been greatly cooperative, and Gabby was very active on social media. As for triangulating cell phones and all of that, police say they are on top of that as well.
Well, last night the family, both sets of parents, her mom and dad and her step-parents were on last night on Fox, and her mom says she's called his mom over and over and over, and she will not pick up the phone. So she is begging her from mother to mother, if this were your child, please give us information.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. And the other thing that's just so mind-blowing is how vast this search has to be, because Gabby was touring national parks. I mean, the last place that she was seen was in Grand Teton, which is, 310,000 acres? Yeah, absolutely. So the police are... Right now, they're handling it in terms of following leads as opposed to looking as a massive ground search.
Carly, real quick, has the boyfriend been interviewed at all? Has there been any law enforcement interaction there at all?
They have made many attempts at trying to talk to Brian, and I just want to check over my shoulder because I saw a car pass, and I'm wondering if it did go in to Gabby's house. Did it go into the laundry house?
I didn't see anything go in there.
The light, okay. So the light just went on in the house. That's what I saw. I noticed that there was some activity behind me, so I apologize if I seemed a little bit distracted. So we can now confirm that somebody is home inside the house. I asked actually police yesterday, not to get caught off track, if they would tell me where Brian is, because everybody suspects that he is at his parents' house right behind me. That's where he came to when he came back from the cross-country road trip without Gabby. They say that they know exactly where Brian is, sort of to answer your question, Pete, but they wouldn't tell me where he is or any members of the press. They may have made many attempts at contacting Brian. Initially, his parents were intervening and saying, nope, you know, he's got his right to remain silent. This isn't a criminal case right now, so they can't force him to speak. And now his lawyer has spoken out and said, on the advice of counsel, Brian is not saying a word at this point.
Yeah, it's just the not saying a word part that just seems so weird to all of us. Carly, thank you very much for joining us live from outside the Laundry House in Northport.
You're welcome. You bet.
Okay. Meanwhile, let's switch gears. Remember, it was last week we saw those 6 jets preparing to take off from Mazar-e Sharif Airport north of Kabul to fly a bunch of Americans and other people out of the country. Remember that? Well, none of those jets were ever cleared. And now it turns out, it was asked of the State Department a couple of days ago, hey, all those Americans on those 6 flights, did they ever leave? And the answer was essentially no. There were 2 Qatar flights last week where I think 10 or 15 Americans were able to get out. But the rest of those people are still in, presumably, Mazar-e Sharif. And here's the thing. The administration says, you know what, we pulled every lever, but the Taliban will not cooperate, which is what happens when you give away all of your leverage, and then after you give away the store, then you say, hey, by the way, can those people leave? And the Taliban saying, no.
Because the Taliban has every incentive and every reason to identify just one name. All you need to say is one name on the manifest, one person who should or should not be here. We need more time to determine who they are, where are their family members, where do they, I mean, it's all an intelligence gathering exercise as they consolidate their power inside the country. And we, as you said, Steve, are left without any leverage at all.
None.
And so Americans are stranded at an airport in Afghanistan right now, unable to leave because their enemies have them.
Forcing the White House to admit that the Taliban is not cooperating, which many of us suspected would happen. In addition to that, do you remember back weeks ago when the president sat down with George Stephanopoulos and he said, all my advisors agree with me. We should not keep troops on the ground. We will not leave anyone behind. He said that, which proved to be false because people are still stranded behind enemy lines. Well, then yesterday we learned that General Miller he testified in front of the Senate Armed Services Committee. It was classified, but there were sources inside the room that came out and told the media that he said, no. I did recommend that 2,500 people stay behind, troops, I should say, 2,500 troops stay behind so that they could protect the Americans that are trying to get out.
Just so that things wouldn't fall into chaos as it did.
So Jackie Heinrich was in the White House press briefing room and asked Jen Psaki about the fact that, as you mentioned, General Miller made this recommendation. What does the White House have to say about it? Listen.
The president told ABC back in August that none of his advisors recommended leaving 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. General Miller told the Senate Armed Services Committee that that was exactly what he recommended. Was the president's answer in that interview an honest answer?
First of all, I'm not going to get into details of private advice that the president gets from his national security team or military advisors. What is clear is that the president asked for, welcomed, candid, non-sugar-coated advice on Afghanistan and what we should do given what we walked into.
And what she continued to say was, you know, the president gets all sorts of opinions, and then he's the decider. So but that's not exactly what the president had said. The president said, all my guys are on the same page with me.
That's
not true.
That's right.
The word from day one from the White House on this, and they've closed ranks on it, is the consensus was all out. Now you have the commander on the ground saying that's not the case. And by the way, you talk to any of these generals, generals have not been recommending for a deadline or a timeline from the beginning. So there's no way they suddenly said, poof, oh, now we're for a date certain on the calendar. All they're doing is filtering out the generals they didn't want to hear from, and then they get a small little group that they can say the consensus is there, and that's what happened.
I'm not in the military. You've served in the military. You still serve in the military. I would think that anyone in the military would say, okay, if we're going to pull out, Let's first get the innocent victims out. Let's get the Americans out first before we pull out our troops, before we close Bagram.
Before we lose our leverage.
That seems like something that is just common sense.
One would think. And then they didn't look at the intelligence, which was screaming that the Taliban was ascendant and making their way to Kabul.
We were
and
showing
so
that map.
They had a fake timeline as if they thought it was going to hold out forever. It bungled top to bottom, yet no one's taken responsibility.
And that's why Joe Biden said 2 days ago that he is completely behind General Milley, because General Milley listened to the commander-in-chief say, hey, pull us out. And he goes, okay, whatever you say. And so here we are.
Well, General
still
Miller,
stuck.
the one who said he recommended the 2,500, he was the commander on the ground in Afghanistan. He knew what was about to happen.
General Milley was too busy calling the Chinese.
There's Miller and there's Milley.
Yes.
Two different people.
And then there's Mealy.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was waiting for one of you to say that. Good morning. Happy Friday to you. Let's go ahead and begin your headlines with this story. An ex-Boeing pilot is expected to face. Special counsel John Durham is charging Michael Sussman for allegedly lying to the FBI in the investigation into the origins of the Trump-Russia probe. This indictment says Sussman, a cybersecurity attorney with ties to the DNC and Clinton campaign, lied about the capacity in which he was providing information to the FBI about the Trump campaign. Sussman's attorneys, though, have come out swinging, saying, quote, Michael Sussman was indicted today because of politics, not facts. Sussman is expected to make his first court appearance later today. And the all-civilian crew of the Inspiration 4 mission sharing these incredible images from their first day in space. They've completed over 15 orbits around the planet since taking off Wednesday. The four-person team spoke to SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, who tweeted that, quote, all is well. They also answered questions from kids at St. Jude's Children's Hospital. The care center shared this photo, look at this, of two kids looking up at their fellow St. Jude's patient, Haley Arsenault, aboard the Inspiration 4 mission. Wow, that's a beautiful photo.
Those are really cool pictures. I saw several of those on Instagram yesterday.
Was that like the blast-off portion?
I guess
Not
so.
sure.
It's down in Florida. Laura Trump was tweeting it out, saying, I love living in Florida. We get to see this kind of thing.
The launches.
It was really cool. It almost looks like, it looks like a bubble. It looks like when you blow bubbles with your kids.
I thought you meant blow smoke.
Space bubbles.
I did do that, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
No, when you spray, those big bubbles with your
thank you,
kids, that's what it looked like.
From Whammo. Remember?
Yes. Exactly.
Okay. Anyway, moving on.
Moving on. The founder of Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy taking Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the comrade, to task on Twitter after she donned a tax the rich dress at last week's Met Gala, where tickets went for at least $30,000.
But Twitter decided to take Portnoy to task, flagging his tweet for, quote, missing context and claiming it could mislead people.
Oh, yeah, of course. Here at The Reaction, Fox and Friends weekend co-hosts Will Cain and Rachel Campos-Duffy. Good morning to both of you.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so Rachel, let's start with you. The context that is missing is that he can't possibly, Dave shouldn't say something bad about her. She's trying to make a political point.
Right, and she says that she was at the Met Gala because she was representing the working class. And I think that picture should actually have a warning label against AOC that says there were no working class Americans helped at this particular event. She did nothing for the working class by going there. In fact, the working class, the servants who worked the event, were all in obedience masks, and she was maskless, even though she's the worst masked Nazi in the country. So this whole thing is an absolute disgrace. I will say I have had multiple AOC tweets myself shadow banned, so I'm not surprised. I'm also not surprised because Twitter banned the sitting president of the United States, former President Donald Trump, but they had the Taliban spokesperson has an account, and all the evil leaders of the communist regime in Cuba do. So do the Ayatollahs. So this is the way it works. And one last point before you get Will Cain in. This is exactly what communism looks like. If you go to Cuba, Fidel Castro had multiple homes. He would have fancy hams flown in from Spain, all the while talking about the working class, and all the while the poor are starving and continue to starve in Cuba. This is what communism looks like, and you're right, Pete. She is a comrade.
She is. Will, you know, when you say something that gets, I don't know, misconstrued or misrepresented in the media, I assume you can go to Twitter and ask them to make sure that people provide some context, right? That goes both ways.
I've never tried. I don't know what their response would be, Pete. However, I suspect it would not be received favorably. You know, I don't like going second because then I have to go, well, Rachel just took my points. But the thing about it is Rachel's nailed it. She's nailed it. The missing context here that Twitter could be referencing is it doesn't tell the full picture of what AOC fully represents there, because I think we're all tempted to go, hypocrisy, look at these people not following the rules that they set for everybody else. But the context that's missing to me, and I did talk about this on the Will Cain podcast, which you can download right now, is that this is a representation of the caste system. Rachel referenced communism, whether or not it be Cuba or the Soviet Union, the caste system that's implemented for rule makers versus rule followers. And it's best illustrated here not by what's written on the back of her dress, but by her handlers carrying the train of her dress, wearing masks, while all the fancy, sophisticated people at the Met Gala don't have to wear masks. It's really a grotesque image. It's really an illustration of the caste system that they would fully implement here in the United States of America.
By the way, we should point out that there have been 2 ethics complaints filed against her for attending because the tickets were $30,000.
Yeah, and we had Kevin McCarthy on talking about that, and he said someone can't buy that ticket for you. You're not allowed to take that as a gift. Oops. So we don't know. Right. We don't know the story, but we'll figure that out.
Might be in trouble.
But it's so obvious she's trying to play both sides. She's like, I really want to go to this. I really want to go to this. You know, highbrow shishi event, and I want to take a part in it.
That celebrates the rich.
That celebrates the rich. So I'll just wear a dress that says tax the rich on it, and that way I'll represent the poorer people that will benefit from that. So
nice. The rules don't apply to you, and Twitter will provide nice context.
And they'll censor you. Dave Portnoy has 2.6 million followers. Twitter doesn't want his followers to see this, and they've actually removed from the search engine this post as well.
Oh, great.
All right, so because the 2 of y'all are here, and Pete's working this weekend too, you get to tell us what's coming up.
Well, guys, in case you don't know, you may or may not, I don't know, in about 23 and a half hours, we're going to have Mark Levin, Sean Duffy, Jason Chaffetz, Clay Travis, and singer Riley Clemens on the show.
Sounds good.
Sound good to you guys?
I may show up. Yeah.
All right. I'll show up if Rachel shows up.
Just set your alarms.
Or don't.
I'll be there.
Just put it on silent.
I'll be there.
All right.
I'm buying breakfast this weekend.
Oh, nice. We were just discussing what should we get today. What should we get today?
It's about time, Rachel. It's been a few months. Okay, you've been grifting.
All right.
Bacon! It's true. Bye, guys. We'll be watching. Thank you.
See you.
In the meantime, get vaccinated or get kicked out of your house. A Florida landlord giving tenants that pandemic ultimatum.
Rising grocery prices putting a strain on families.
And now Democrats are pushing the largest tax hike in history. Here to discuss, House Homeland Security Committee member Congresswoman Kat Kammett. Congresswoman, great to see you. Here are the numbers. Raising a corporate tax rate from 20 to 26.5%, up from 21%. 18% on the first $400,000 of income, 21% on income up to $5 million at 26.5% on income, about $5 million, and hyping that capital gains up to 25%, spiking the top rate to 39.6. Democrats say it's all about making the rich pay their fair share. But what would this do to rural America?
Well, good morning, Jillian and Todd. And yeah, I think we need to bust out the mimosas because we're going to need it for the next 2 weeks. It's going to be pure hell. The Democrats are hell-bent on bankrupting this country. You know, we've seen for the last 2 weeks the committee instructions that we've been going through to really mark up this $3.5 trillion wish list of liberal items that Bernie Sanders has been working his entire career for. This truly is a Biden blueprint to bankrupt America, but in particular, like you said, rural America. I represent a very rural area of north central Florida, and you look at just the cost of gasoline, it's up 42%. Think of the impact that has just in trying to get to the job, because at this point, everything is so sky high. You're working multiple jobs unless you're one of those that is being paid by the government not to work. So the cost of everything has gone up. The supply chain is all out of whack. And we are seeing cost of goods from groceries, eggs, chicken, bacon, you name it. It's all gone up. If you've rented a car recently or flown on an airplane, you've seen that the prices are astronomical. everyday life is changing in front of our eyes because this administration is all about taxing us into oblivion. But more than that, I think is dangerous is they're taxing us into submission. This agenda is nothing more about compliance and dependency. That is really what is scary because it is all having a down trickle effect on all of us here in rural America, from healthcare costs to everyday expenses and goods to travel. It is getting very scary for us out here. Rural America.
Congresswoman, we're taking a look right now at some of those things you mentioned. You talked about car and truck rental. Look at that, up 73.5%. That's year to year. Gas up 43%. Hotels 24.1%. As you can see there, some of your meats, things like that, up 13.7%. Milk 8.1%. Eggs up 5.7%. Let's take a listen to what House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has to say on all of this.
Another reward for blue states, California and New York, to raise their rates and have other people subsidize that. That's not what you want. You want to live within your means. But what's happening is you've got so many fiefdoms within the Democratic Party that want to expand more, not let people keep more of what they earn.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like this is a problem that is going to potentially, harm this country and harm the wallets of so many people for generations to come.
Absolutely. We are garnishing the wages of our children and grandchildren. And you look at a state like Florida, our top two economic drivers are tourism and agriculture. You look at the cost of goods and how that's all gone up. It's really getting passed to the consumer at the end. They're going to buy less and look for cheaper produce, which is going to drive a need to import more cheap foreign produce from Mexico. You look at tourism, that involves renting cars, flying airplanes, and staying in hotels. All of those prices are up. People are going to stay and do staycations more rather than come to the great state of Florida. And when you look at what this administration is about, like I said, it's the tax and spend. They have no desire for Americans to make decisions for themselves, let alone keep the money that they are working so hard to earn. We see that in the mandates that they are pushing. We see that in the tax code that they're ramming down our throats. Not a single Republican amendment in this $3.5 trillion plan has been adopted. That is extremely dangerous. Not one idea has been adopted. Not one amendment has been offered by the Democrats. It's a rubber stamp of Bernie Sanders' plans and Biden's bankruptcy plan. That is what is so dangerous, because if you look at the course of 10 years, this is going to cost Americans $68 trillion. It's not just $3.5 trillion, $68 trillion over 10 years. And this is in addition to normal infrastructure, to our normal appropriations, and of course, in addition to all the COVID spending that has taken place. This is insane. We have higher tax rates effectively than communist China.
Which is insane.
We've got to wake up, and we've got to get people turned out for the midterms. Our country's future is at stake.
Let's see how strong the moderate Dems in your chamber stand, along with Manchin and Sinema there in the Senate. Congresswoman Kat Cammack, we appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great week.
All right, Mealy gave me a look like, why are you ending so early? It's Cup